We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. That's how we move. We don't ask power for permission to tell the truth, and we don't let bullies rewrite the record just because they're loud. So here's what's happening right now, and why people are saying a prosecutor just dropped bad news for Pam Bondi. Because the pattern is back clear as day, and it's the same ugly playbook Donald Trump has been running for years. Lose in court, rage in public demand, revenge, and try to turn the Justice Department into a personal weapon. In the aftermath of Jack Smith's testimony to the House Judiciary Committee, Trump went on Truth Social and did what he always does when he feels cornered. He didn't argue the facts. He didn't challenge the legal reasoning. He went straight for dehumanizing language, calling Smith a deranged animal, and claiming he shouldn't be allowed to practice law. And then this is the part that matters. Trump basically signaled to the Attorney General that he wants retaliation. He framed it like, hopefully the Attorney General is looking at what he's done, and he tossed in talk about crooked and corrupt witnesses, like he's not so subtly telling Pam Bondi, go after this guy. Go after anyone connected to him. And let's be real. This is Trump doing the same thing he's done with Letitia James, James Comey, Adam Schiff, Jerome Powell, whoever gets under his skin, whoever threatens his ego, whoever reminds him he's not above the law. It's not leadership. It's not law and order. It's a tantrum with a microphone and an audience. So the first question is obvious. When Trump says this stuff out loud, when he effectively broadcasts, I want DOJ to prosecute my enemies, does it undermine the credibility of any prosecution that might come out of DOJ? Absolutely. It's like he can't stop himself. Nobody can accuse Donald Trump of learning from his failures. He keeps touching the hot stove and then screaming that the stove is rigged. Because Trump's problem is that he treats prosecution like a revenge tool. He acts like the legal system is just another campaign prop, like it's supposed to be used to punish people he hates. And he's done this before. He has posted messages aimed directly at Pam Bondi, basically telling her, you've got to get after Letitia James. You've got to get after James Comey. These people need to be prosecuted. They're making us look bad. He uses the same justification every time. They came after me. They impeached me. They prosecuted me. So now you do it to them. That is not a legal basis for anything. You don't prosecute people because you were prosecuted. You don't get a revenge coupon because you're mad you got held accountable. And here's what's especially embarrassing for Trump. These vindictive efforts don't even tend to end with some dramatic courtroom showdown where his enemies are defeated. They usually collapse because they're built on nonsense. The attempts to go after people like James Comey and Letitia James went down in flames and got dismissed. And in at least one of those situations, it didn't even get to the big, philosophical question of vindictive prosecution because the mechanics were broken. A Trump-aligned figure, Lindsay Halligan, was pushed into a role as U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, and it turned out she wasn't lawfully in that position. A judge called it out, and then poof, she was gone. She quit, resigned, fled, however you want to describe it. The point is, the operation fell apart because it wasn't rooted in law. It was rooted in loyalty and stunt politics. Now Trump thinks he's being strategic when he does this. Part of his calculation is, even if the case doesn't stick, I can still put them through hell. He wants Pam Bondi to indict people who committed no crimes, just so they have to hire lawyers, spend money, live under pressure, and get dragged through public mud. That's how a vindictive person thinks. That's how an authoritarian thinks. He doesn't care about justice, he cares about pain. But here's the kicker. Even when Trump tries to play strongman, who ends up looking strong and who ends up looking weak? In the long run, people like James Comey, Letitia, James, Jerome Powell, people who stand their ground tend to come out looking steady. Trump ends up looking like a paper tiger. He gets weaker and weaker and weaker by the day, because the more he whines and threatens, the more he reveals what this really is: fear. He's scared of accountability. He's scared of scrutiny. He's scared of anyone who won't kneel. And I know some people listening are thinking, okay, but even if these prosecutions fail, the damage is still real. Exactly. The harassment itself can wreck someone's life. Legal defense costs are brutal. The stress of being investigated is brutal. The public smear campaign is brutal. And unlike a civil lawsuit where you can sometimes countersue for damages, the criminal process doesn't just hand you a neat little receipt that says, here's your life back. Sorry for the inconvenience. So what's the recourse? How does someone make themselves whole after being targeted by a vindictive prosecution? The hard truth is, most of the time you can't be made whole. You can't get your peace back the way it was. You can't always recover the money. You can't undo the headlines. and this is important, people don't have to sit back and wait to be steamrolled. That's why the discussion turns to John Brennan, former CIA director. There was talk that DOJ might criminally investigate him down in Florida and try to drive that matter into Judge Eileen Cannon's courthouse. Because sure, that would be fair and impartial, right? The concern is the same one people have been raising for a while. When venue and judge selection starts looking like strategy instead of random assignment, it starts smelling like judge shopping. Brennan's side didn't just sit there quietly hoping the storm would pass. His lawyer pushed back, arguing that this kind of maneuver violates basic principles of fairness and asking higher courts to intervene early rather than waiting for a vindictive indictment to land. And that's the blueprint. If you're being targeted by lawless, abusive hacks who have abandoned the rule of law to do Donald Trump's dirty work, you don't just wait for the knock at the door. You take the fight to court. You put it on the record. You go public. You force transparency. Because the whole game of a vindictive prosecution is to isolate the target, drain them financially, and make them feel alone. Now let's talk about Pam Bondi, because this is where the bad news part hits hardest. If Bondi or DOJ officials engage in vindictive prosecutions, do they shoulder personal legal exposure? Yes, and we have plenty of examples of Trump world legal operatives getting burned. When accountability finally catches up, Rudy Giuliani, a Trump lawyer doing Trump's dirty work, was disbarred in jurisdictions where he held a license. Kenneth Chesebro wasn't just disciplined, he was criminally prosecuted and pleaded guilty in Georgia in connection with election subversion. John Eastman, tied to the fake elector scheme, faced disbarment consequences. Jeffrey Clark, the DOJ knucklehead, who tried to weaponize the department for Trump, faced discipline too. These things can move slowly, but they move. People who use their licenses and offices to serve a political leader instead of the Constitution don't get to do that forever with no consequences. So yes, in Bondi's case, there can be referrals to state bar council ethics investigations and professional discipline. And beyond that, depending on evidence, there can be civil exposure. It's not easy to successfully sue a government official, but here's the critical point. Vindictively investigating or prosecuting people because Trump posted that he wants it is not within the scope of legitimate official duties. That's not doing your job. That's abusing your office. And then there's another layer that makes this worse. The Epstein files controversy. The claim being made is that Bondi is in violation of federal law tied to an Epstein Files Transparency Act deadline, specifically that material required to be disclosed by a certain date has not been disclosed, and that this looks like covering up evidence that should be public. The allegation goes even further, that the material could include evidence incriminating powerful people connected to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking conspiracy, and that withholding it could open the door to serious legal scrutiny. To be clear, that's an allegation. But it's an allegation with a dangerous implication for an attorney general. If you're seen as protecting the powerful and burying evidence, you don't just get criticized, you get investigated. So Bondi's world of trouble could include ethics discipline, civil litigation, and potentially criminal scrutiny if evidence supports it. And all of that is made more volatile by Trump's constant public pressure. Because when Trump is out there basically ordering prosecutions, he's not just undermining DOJ legitimacy, he's creating a trail that lawyers, judges, and investigators can point to later and say, this wasn't a good faith exercise of discretion. This was political retaliation. Now here's the part that really matters for the future. Who actually brings accountability? Is it on the victims? Comey, Letitia James, Jack Smith, to sue and assert their rights? Or does it require a future DOJ to step in and prosecute wrongdoing within DOJ itself? This is where people bring up Merrick Garland and the lesson that still burns. The argument is that Garland's DOJ moved too cautiously, too worried about optics, too afraid of being accused of politicization, and the right screamed weaponization anyway. That restraint didn't restore trust. It didn't protect legitimacy. It didn't stop extremists from attacking the institution. And now with Trump back in the picture wielding threats like a club, it's obvious, if we don't learn from those failures, we risk losing the Republic's core promise, equal justice under law. So the answer has to be both. A future DOJ must aggressively hold wrongdoers accountable without fear or favor, applying evidence and law, not vibes and politics. And the people being targeted can't just wait quietly. They have to assert their rights, push back early, and expose the abuse in court and in public. Because the moment you normalize political prosecutions, you don't have justice. You have power games. Finally, there's the statute of limitations. For most federal crimes, it's 5 years from the time of the crime. After that, charges can be time-barred. But there's a twist. People keep pointing to conspiracy. If officials are involved in an ongoing conspiracy to commit crimes against the United States, what's often discussed as a 371 conspiracy, the clock may not start until the conspiracy is over. So if the alleged abusive conduct is ongoing, time may not even be running out yet. That's why the bad news for Pam Bondi isn't just about today's headlines. It's about the legal shadow that can follow for years. So let's say it plain. Trump is not seeking justice. He's seeking domination. He's not defending the Constitution. He's testing how far he can bend it before it breaks. And Pam Bondi is standing at the intersection of that pressure and the law, where every decision can become evidence. We are anonymous, and we don't do silence. So if you're still here, use your voice. Share this, subscribe, and keep watching the people who claim power is theirs by right. The only way this ends is if we refuse to look away.